What is going on, everyone? We are back with another review, and I still got the timer going from the thing. As you can see, I didn't take too much time to think about it. Welcome to the channel. This is a review for Season 1, which is the only season. Episode 6 of Welcome to Paradox, and this episode was called The Extra. Please remember, if you click the link in the description below, hop on over to the Patreon, you can sign up where you can see everything that comes out a full week early. So with that being said, this was interesting. I don't know. I'm going to be honest with you, though. I don't know how I feel about the episode as a whole. I can only go based on speculation for some things. But we'll get into that. So this was directed by Rod Pretty, written by Greg Egan, and William Harrison, and this episode released September 21st, 1998. The cast consists of Dean Barrett as reporter number 1, Stacey Copeland as a guest, Gary Davey as Dr. Caver, Mark Holden as clerk, Allison Matthews as the agent, Eileen Petty as reporter number 2, Justine Priestley as Sarah Dale, Tanya Reed as reporter number 3, Rodney Rowland as Daniel Gray /C7, Peter Williams as Dr. Ben Polaris, and Greg Wong as a bodyguard. So, to give you a rundown of what happened during this episode in the best way that I can recap it, and this is not going to be easy. So, we find out early on that Daniel Gray has a group of clones of varying ages that has been raised in order for him to have body parts for transplants, because he's wealthy and he's able to do that. And he invites this dancer, so to speak, over because he's trying to woo her. He likes this woman. She's apparently a very popular / famous dancer. And upon bringing her in to a party, she decides she wants to sleep with one of the clones. He obliges because he wants to do anything for her. And she grabs the 24-year-old clone. They takes him into a room. They get it on. It's watched by the party. And then the next morning, she wakes up and confronts Daniel because she finds out, Sarah Dale is her name, she finds out that he was watching and wasn't exactly too pleased. She wasn't exactly mad either, but then he explains that, with it being a clone, they don't know how he was going to react, so they had to keep her safe. That's a BS reply, but that's how that went. Now, needless to say, very much so, watching everything go down, he was becoming extremely jealous of himself, which is really weird. So then he goes on to talk with what was his name? Ben Polaris, I believe, or Dr. Ben Polaris, I believe, is his physician. Sorry, I woke up from a nap not so long ago, so I'm still trying to wake up. And yeah, things got a little so he meets with Ben and discusses with him. He talks with her and talks about him caring for her as much as not Ben. During this conversation earlier on, Daniel Gray talks with Sarah and tells her that he wants to be with her. She basically says, "You're too old. Men past 40 can't quite keep things up." I'm not. She didn't. She beat around the bush more than that, but we'll say that. So during all this, he decides he wants to have a brain transplant with his 24-year-old self. So he talks to Dr. Ben Polaris, and basically tells him that Dr. Carver and himself are going to do this transplant into the younger body. Now, during all of this, Mr. Polaris is also starting to be able to communicate with C7, which is the clone that she slept with. And he's able to talk almost like a functioning adult. He talks very primitively, but understandably. Like, you know what he's saying. And Dr. Polaris doesn't, like, is more interested in the fact that he's cognizant and able to carry conversation. He doesn't want to just kill off C7 basically to move Ben's mind into him. He also notices that Ben starts doing things like protecting the kids from the older clones of himself. And he's super interested in how all of this is unfolding. So Daniel Gray goes to a party of Sarah's and basically announces to the paparazzi that he's going to undergo a brain transplant specifically for Sarah. And she's not too happy about this, but afterwards, she even tells him in private as they're walking away from the paparazzi, "You may be the dumbest man alive," or something like that. So, shortly before the actual transplant is to take place, Sarah ends up meeting Dr. Caver at his hotel room and seduces him into whatever decision is going to be made, and basically reveals that at some point he hit on her a year, somewhere between 1 to 5 years prior, and she never got back with him. But now she's willing to do things with him as long as, and they don't really say, right? They just allude to the fact that the transplant is going to be different. Isn't going to go the way Daniel wants him to go. So, fast forward, it's time for the transplant, and Ben Polaris doesn't want to do the transplant, and he pretty much admits it to Caver, but Caver's like, "Look, you want to do this, or I'm going to go and tell every major publication that you're a hack and you're never going to get anywhere." Which he's trying to be a better doctor, so they go through with it. And after the surgery is over, Daniel comes out, meets with Sarah Caver and Ben, and they're all sitting around, and he's like, "Since the surgery was a success and I'm in the, I am now young, who I am, I want to change my name to something like Mark or something like that." Dr. Caver says everything went wonderfully. He leaves. Ben walks him to the door, and while they're gone, the new Daniel, or Carl, or whatever it was that he wants to be called, basically told Sarah he wants nothing to do with her. And she was like, I guess, if it would have, she's like, I had Dr. Caver changed the surgery specifically. You owe me. And he's like, yeah, no, not going to happen. And she was like, well, I guess, I should have let a little more Daniel come through during the surgery. But then again, if she would have done that, and she said, this is what she says, by the way, if she'd have done that, she wouldn't have wanted to be around him. And then she leaves. Ben comes back. Ben and Daniel talk. And that's where they reveal it's more C7 than it is Daniel Gray. He definitely has the speech abilities of Daniel Gray more so than he had with as C7. So he got that much of him, and he also got his artistic ability. And when I say that, it's because they walk over to a piano. He starts playing the piano, and he's able to fully play it. He goes, at that point, Ben goes to go check on how Daniel's doing, the original Daniel, and he's turned into more of a primitive mind state type of human being, where it's like eating pudding and not able to communicate. And that's how the episode ended. I am going to have to say, so let me do this. If I open up Google Docs, I keep a list of how I rank things. It's not a list you guys really see. This is probably my new. Well, hold on. We've watched 5 episodes. No, because even that was pretty decent. This is my least favorite episode. And I'll tell you why. I don't think it's a bad premise. I think the idea of this clone / slave, as it's called throughout some of it. I think the idea of this is there, and it's interesting. And I wasn't bored watching this. And again, guys, this is still better than most Twilight Zone episodes that I've seen. I'm still liking this show more than the Twilight Zone, if I'm being honest, for as far as the first season. Now, Twilight Zone has gotten better where we're at currently. But here's my problem with this episode specifically. You don't really find out what happened. You can only make assumptions. You can only go based off of context clues. And I'm pretty sure they just brought enough of Daniel's mind state over so that C7 could function as a fully functioning clone / the new Daniel or Mark. But they don't really go into details, so they're just kind of leave it open for interpretation. And I want you guys to understand something. I am not a fan of leaving things open for interpretation. I don't like open endings to things where you're just supposed to be like, oh, well, I guess this is what happened. And then you got to debate with somebody else, and they're like, oh, no, because of this earlier, I'm pretty sure this is what happened. And I hate it. Give me a definite conclusion. Give me a definite what's going on in some way, shape, or form. And I'm not even saying I need it told directly to me, but give me enough context clues to fully make an assumption of what's going on. They just didn't really do that here. They gave you a few little breadcrumbs, and it was just kind of like, good luck. Hope you figure it out. Again, though, the acting this is probably some of the better acting so far. And yeah, again, it's enjoyable. It's just my least favorite so far out of the entire series. So that is going to do it, guys, for this review. Again, I am thoroughly enjoying going through Welcome to Paradox. And it was definitely, so far, a Twilight Zone for the 90s and set in the future. A futuristic Twilight Zone set in the 90s. There you go. Even though technically a lot of Twilight Zone does seem to take place in the future. So anyways, that is going to do it, guys. Love you. We'll see you next time. Peace.